Yeah, it seems that I'm recording as well. So we are both recording and we can begin to
Yes. Uh, thank you. Thank you so much, Professor Samvekling. It's a great pleasure to me have this conversation with you
Thank you.
about narcissists. My name is Tatiane Meinhart. I am chemistry and psychoanalyst. Actually, I am second year of psychology graduation in Brazil. Professor Samvekling is the pioneer in the field and the author of the book Malignant Self-Love Narcissist Revisit. And now I'm going to start off with a quote that Professor Saveknin said about the narcissist in a video about 10 years ago. I love to be hated and I hate to be loved. Please, Professor, can you comment on this quote?
Yes, it was actually Winnicott, Donald Winnicott, the famous pediatrician who later turned to psychoanalysis. Donald Winnicott and then later on Cyrulic and other scholars suggested that children who grow up in abusive environments, children who are traumatized in childhood, they disbelieve in love. They don't believe that love is genuine. They think love is fake. They believe love is manipulative. They feel much more comfortable when they're hated, when they're abused. This is their comfort zone. So as these children grow up and become adults, when they're hated, when they're abused, when they're subject to anger, and they feel good. They feel that they know how to cope, they know how to behave, they know what they have to do. But when they're subjected to love, when people empathize with them, compassionate about them, and so on, they feel threatened and they feel humiliated. So they drive everyone around them to hate them because then they feel adequate, they feel efficacious, they feel in control, and it feels familiar. And when
Yes.
people refuse to abuse them and refuse to hate them, they drive these people to hate them and abuse them. They provoke, they trigger, they misbehave. And this is called projective identification. Projective identification is when you attribute to someone else something inside you which you reject, something inside you which you cannot accept. You attribute it to someone else, and then you force that person to behave in accordance to the projection, in accordance to the attribution. So if you want someone to abuse you, you would say, this person is an abuser, and then you would force the person to behave abusively. And this is projective identification.
Yes. It's a behavior that the person tried to reinforce. It's a pattern.
Reinforcement and other behaviorist
Yes.
other behaviorist terms, it's not so much conditioning, and it's not so much it's more about expectations or communication of expectations. There are, of course, rewards. There are rewards and there are punishments. There are negative reinforcements and positive reinforcements. All this is normal. But the emphasis is on fantasy. The emphasis is on a narrative. It's like a movie. And the narcissist has a part in this movie, and you have a part in this movie. And you're
Yes.
expected to follow the script like an actress. So it's more about adhering to the narrative, more about fulfilling the fiction, fulfilling the theater play, and so on, than about classical conditioning.
And someone that take this projection identification is someone that has diffused identity.
Not necessarily. It is true that people with identity diffusion or identity disturbance, as we call it today, it is true that such people, for example, people with borderline personality disorder, people with dependent personality disorder, also known as codependence, and so on and so forth, it's true that these kind of people would be more susceptible, more vulnerable to outside manipulation, and they would participate more willingly and even, I would say, automatically, unconsciously in these dynamics. That part is true because identity is a kind of defense. Identity involves boundaries. Identity involves a firewall that separates you. Identity means that you know the difference between internal and external. Identity means you don't enmesh, you don't fuse, you don't merge with another person. And people without identity or functional identity or core identity, these people kind of flow into another person. They become one with other people, with another person. So the borderline, for example, becomes one with her intimate partner because the intimate partner regulates her moods, her emotions, and provides other psychological function. But the truth is that even completely healthy, boundaried people can be open to such an attack. For example, if you are totally healthy, totally boundaried, totally normal, and you're going through a very difficult period in your life, you're going through a crisis, then your defenses would be down, your boundaries would be breached, and you would be open to this kind of infection or contagion or attack. So it's not limited to people with identity diffusion. It's a much wider phenomenon.
Okay. Professor, how can you define NPD after almost 30 years studying this subject?
Well, first of all, call me Sam. It would make a much better use of the time.
Okay.
My name is Sam. Narcissistic personality disorder can be defined by specifying diagnostic criteria, which are mostly behavioral criteria. So exploitativeness, lack of empathy. So you can describe narcissistic personality disorder as a relational disorder in relation to other people. That's one way. Another way is to describe the negative affectivity of narcissists. So, for example, anger or rage, envy, these are negative affects. Narcissists have no access to positive emotions like love. They never experience love, but they experience a lot of rage and a lot of envy. So that's another way to describe it. A third way to describe it, which is the way the ICD-11, the International Classification of Diseases, edition 11, they do it, is by specifying trait domains, traits. So, for example, dissociality or antagonism or anankastia, which is another word for perfectionism. So if you put all these traits together, you get the picture of a narcissist. So that's a third way. The fourth way is to write literature about the narcissist, to capture the essence of the narcissist via literature. And even in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, edition 5, text revision, which was published 2 years ago, there is a piece of literature about narcissistic personality disorder, and it is called the alternative model. And it sounds exactly like Dostoevsky. It doesn't sound like psychology. But I think after 30 years, that if you want to capture the essence of narcissism, you have to focus on a few critical points. Number one, narcissism, pathological narcissism, because there is healthy narcissism. Pathological, also known as secondary narcissism, is a disruption in the formation of the self. These are people who do not possess a functioning self, or what Freud used to call ego. They don't have a functioning self. Ironically, narcissists are selfless. They are not egotists. They are exactly the opposite of egotists. They have no ego. And because they don't possess a core identity, because inside there is just emptiness, a black hole, they suck other people in. They use other people to regulate their internal environment. They force other people to somehow help them to trigger and then sustain psychological dynamics. They outsource psychological dynamics to other people. So that's point number one. Point number two, narcissists, exactly like psychotics, are unable to tell the difference between external and internal. They confuse internal objects with external objects, exactly like people with psychosis. And this phenomenon is known as hyperreflexivity. That's a crucial thing because it means that narcissists are incapable of having object relations. They're incapable of having relationships, interpersonal relationships.
Mhm.
Because what they do, they convert people, they convert external objects into internal objects, and they continue the interaction internally, never externally. The third element in narcissism is that it is a discrepant disorder. In other words, it's a disorder that has to do with gaps, with discrepancies, with mismatch, or in short, with dissonance. So, for example, there is implicit self-esteem and explicit self-esteem. The narcissist has very low implicit self-esteem. Actually, narcissists have inferiority complex. The Adler called it inferiority complex. Or if you want, narcissists have an internalized bad object, a constellation of voices that keeps telling the narcissist, you're unlovable, you're inadequate, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're... So this is the implicit self-esteem, and it's extremely low. The explicit self-esteem, the observable self-esteem, is inordinately and exceptionally and exaggeratedly high, disproportionate to any real-life accomplishments. Totally entitled and crazy, I would say, delusional. So here is one discrepancy, critical discrepancy in narcissism, and there are many others. It's an ego incongruent or ego discrepant disorder. The next thing I think in pathological narcissism is that, and that is nothing new, is that it is a fantasy defense. Narcissism, pathological narcissism involves renouncing and giving up on reality completely and withdrawing into a self-constructed, self-enhancing, self-aggrandizing, fantastic, inflated fantasy. But then trying to impose this fantasy on other people, which is very reminiscent to a cult or a religion. So it's missionary. The fantasy is missionary. It's like you need, the narcissist demands, insists that you participate in the fantasy and that you pretend that the fantasy is reality. And if you don't, he punishes you. And this is a core feature of narcissism. Psychopaths use fantasies, borderlines use fantasies, but not in a coercive way. The psychopath would lure you into the fantasy, and there it would be a folie à deux. It would be like shared psychosis, you know. But there will be no penalty if you walk away. The borderline uses fantasy to regulate herself. So it's an external regulation. The fantasy is used to capture external regulators, people who can help the borderline to regulate her emotions and moods. It's very different to the fantasy of the narcissist, because the fantasy of the narcissist is total, nothing is left out, no connection with reality, total impaired reality testing. And it is highly totalitarian, highly coercive. And when I say narcissism, it's not only the clinical entity. Narcissism is an organizing principle of the modern world. You have shared fantasies in politics. So you have millions, tens of millions of people participating in the shared fantasy. You have all these elements in many other fields of society and social functioning. It's not limited to the individual. That's why narcissism is such a buzzword today. That's why everyone is using narcissism, because you can use narcissism to make sense of your world, to imbue reality with meaning, to gain purpose and direction, to guess, to create a theory of mind. In other words, you can use narcissism to try to guess or speculate what makes other people behave the way they do, what motivates other people. It has many uses. And so narcissism, I think, is going to be the next religion, the next political theory, and the next philosophy. We're going to have a world where everything will be narcissistic and based on narcissism. I think we're getting there.
Everybody divorce of reality. In this topic, share fantasy, this concept impact on me. Many times I watch you in YouTube, and this concept give me a tool to be ground, because every time that you are talking with someone that have these traits or the narcissist personality disorder, you need to adapt to the view of this person, and you need to say no to what you say. I am with heartache. No, you are not with no pain. I am tired. No, you not. You are not. You stay at home every day. So you need to agree with this person. And personally, when I be with a narcissist, I don't want to talk about this person, at least. And I will just contrariate. I work all day. I didn't stay at the sofa, sleeping or watching TV. So every time I was debating these topics with this person. So a lot of drama. And with this concept of shared fantasy, I learned that when I talk with a narcissist, I need to agree for my benefit. Okay, the sky is red. Yes, red. But when I spend many hours with this kind of person, I start to feel bad. My body, because I don't have opinion. I just need to agree with this person. Yes, 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 yes. So I use this tool now to be ground, to deal with the narcissist. I keep my reality, and sometimes I jump in this shared fantasy to cope with this kind of person. When I get the shared fantasy, many times I communicate with the narcissist. Always I agree to not have problem. But it's so difficult, Professor Samvekring. And I want to ask for you to explain the role of this power phenomena that you name and coin share fantasy. Because now I am divorced from this narcissist. And many times I say what he wants to listen. He keeps a dialogue with me like I am an enemy. So I need to say that you are the best. You are the best. Oh, I lose you. You are the best. Sorry, you are now married with a woman that's perfect. Oh, I am a slave. But in my heart, it hurts because I need to say this lie, this bullshit, for keep my peace. But it's very difficult. And why? Sometimes, someday I watch a video that you say that when the end of the shared fantasy, the narcissist leave you behind. But when you keep provoking you after their discard and after this person are married with another woman, why the narcissist keep you in his life like an enemy.
Yeah.
You say nothing. You do everything that he wants, he or she. And he tries and keep trying to create drama and chaos.
Yeah.
Why? Why he keep trying, keep you like an enemy?
I understood the question. I explain it in some of my videos, but I will explain it here also. First of all, I'm not the person who I didn't coin the phrase shared fantasy. It was first described by Sander, Sander. Sander was a psychoanalyst. He described it in 1989. So he came up with the concept of shared fantasy. But I am the first to apply the concept of shared fantasy to narcissistic abuse and narcissistic relationships. When the narcissist reaches the second half of the shared fantasy, he needs to get rid of you. He needs to get rid of you because there is a complex dynamics. The shared fantasy is a simulation of the narcissist's relationship with his mother in early childhood. You became a mother. Within the shared fantasy, you become a kind of mother. You also become the narcissist's child, but you also become the narcissist's mother. And so he needs to get rid of you. He failed to separate from his original mother because his original mother did not allow him to separate. She was very insecure, or very selfish, or very depressive, or she was what we call a dead mother, metaphorically. So she was a bad mother, and she did not allow the narcissist to become an individual by separating from her, one way or another. So the narcissist goes through life trying to find substitute mothers and then separate from them. And the way to separate from them is to devalue them and then discard them, dump them, throw them away, break up with them. That is a symbolic act of separation. So the narcissist is compulsive. He cannot help it. He cannot help this. This is what Freud called the repetition compulsion. He goes around, he finds mother substitutes, he idealizes the mother because mother is perfect and mother will give him unconditional love. And then he needs to separate from mother, so he devalues mother and he discards mother. And this is a symbolic reenactment of the original dynamic of separation, individuation from the biological mother. Okay. But when the narcissist devalues the intimate partner, he converts the intimate partner from an idealized object to a persecutory object. He converts the intimate partner from a godlike, perfect entity, internal object. Remember, the narcissist does not interact with external objects. He does not interact with you. To this very day, he does not interact with you. He is interacting with internal objects. So initially, the internal object that represented you in his mind was all perfect, was ideal. But then, to get rid of you, he needed to make you the exact opposite, an enemy, hostile, dangerous, threatening, malicious, malevolent, demonic, etc. So he devalues you. But then he discards you, and he remains stuck. He remains left with the persecutory internal object. He got rid of you physically. You're out of his life. He moved on. He has another intimate partner, but the internal object that represents you in his mind remains. You're gone. You disappeared. Maybe even you died, physically died. But the internal object is there. And the internal object is an enemy. It's persecutory. Because remember, in the devaluation, you became an enemy. So now the situation is
all bad.
It's all bad. Yes, this is splitting defense. It's a splitting defense. Initially, you're all good, and then you're all bad. It's a splitting defense. Okay. So now it's a situation. You're out of the narcissist's life. You're not there physically, but there is an internal object that represents you, which is all bad, and a very threatening object because it's all bad. It's wicked, it's evil, it's malevolent, it's malicious. So this creates dissonance. It's terrifying to have such an object in your mind. It's very frightening. So what the narcissist tries to do, he tries to force you to conform to the internal object. He tries to force you to become the internal object. In other words, the internal object is an enemy, he wants you to be an enemy. The internal object is evil, he wants to see you as evil. The internal object is malevolent, he wants to regard you as malevolent. So then there will be no dissonance. Because if you match the internal object 100%, there is no dissonance. Then there is no dissonance. This is why he forces you to become an external persecutory object to match the internal.
Force you in reality.
In reality, yes. He forces the external object to match the internal object. By the way, this is always true. Throughout the shared fantasy, the narcissist manipulates you because he wants the external object, you, to match the internal object that represents you in his mind. When there is a mismatch, when there is no match, there is dissonance, very uncomfortable feeling, very unpleasant, very threatening. So he constantly manipulates you and so on.
So, okay.
Yeah.
So when it ends, for God's sake.
It doesn't end. It never ends. The narcissist remains with your object for life.
Yes, but if I'm not the matching with the persecutory object,
Then
I am trying to.
Then
He's trying to.
Then he has two options. He can re-idealize you and then try to have another relationship with you. This is called hoovering.
Yes.
So he re-idealizes you, and then there is a match.
Okay.
You're again an idealized object. And alternatively, he can say the fact that you don't match the persecutory object proves that you are Machiavellian, proves that you are manipulative, proves that you're psychopathic, you're faking it, you're lying, you're deceitful. So he reframes the external object to match the internal object. But he can never get rid of the internal object. There's no such thing, by the way. No one can. He can never get rid of it. And the dissonance is always there. And as long as you're alive and as long as he has contact with you, he will try to coerce you. He'll try to reframe you, manipulate you, mutate you, change you to match the object.
Okay. Professor, there's a...
Sam, my name is Sam.
Sorry. Sam Vecni.
Yes, Sam.
I agree with you that narcissists are not gaslighters. In fact, they really believe in your own fantasies. But many experts and many mental health professionals describe this technique, the gaslighting, as a tool that narcissists use to manipulate their victims. Can you bring clarity to this topic? After all, who practice gaslight?
There are no mental health experts online. And only people online say this. People in academia don't say this. The people online are not experts. They are charlatans, they are dilettantes, and they are con artists. Period. Even people with doctor, they are con artists. So if you want to learn something, you need to go to scholarly and academic literature and never ever listen to anything on YouTube, because it's most of it is complete nonsense. Gaslighting involves several important elements. First of all, gaslighting is recognized in the clinical literature, and there are studies, and there are so. And it includes several important elements. Number one, there must be a power asymmetry. Gaslighting cannot happen between equals. It can happen only when there is some kind of power play or power asymmetry. Someone is stronger than another. Someone is more knowledgeable than another. Someone has more access to reality than another. Someone has more contacts than another. When there is this flow of power in a hierarchical way, then you could have gaslighting. Number one. Number two, gaslighting is always intentional. There is no such thing as unintentional gaslighting. It's always premeditated, deliberate. In other words, it's a Machiavellian psychopathic technique. Number three, the gaslighter knows the difference between reality and fantasy. He knows the difference between reality and the version of reality that he is trying to impose on another person. The narcissist does not satisfy any of these three conditions. The narcissist perceives the shared fantasy as shared. So everyone in the shared fantasy in the idealization phase is equal. Number two, equal in terms of power. It's like partnership. It's like more like a partnership. Number two, narcissists do not gaslight intentionally, cunningly. They're not cunning. They're not scheming. They're not psychopaths. They don't have an agenda. Narcissists are not interested in money or sex or power like psychopaths. Narcissists are interested in narcissistic supply. So if by getting rich they can obtain supply, then they will get rich to obtain supply. If by becoming president of the United States they will obtain supply, they will become president of the United States. So everything is a means, is a tool to obtain supply. Psychopaths are interested in sex, in power, in money. They're goal-oriented. And so psychopaths gaslight intentionally and deliberately. It's in a premeditated manner. And finally, and most importantly, narcissists cannot tell the difference between fantasy and reality. They have impaired reality testing. They believe that the fantasy is real. They are delusional. They have a delusional disorder. So if you believe in your own stories, in your own fantasies, in your own lies, in your own deceptions, in your own promises, if you believe in your own promises, then you are not gaslighting. You are not future faking. Psychopaths future fake. Narcissists never future fake. When the narcissist makes you a promise about the future, the narcissist believes in this promise. He believes he's going to keep the promise. He never does. But when he makes the promise, he believes it. When he introduces you into the fantasy, he believes in the fantasy. When he tells you we're going to get married, we're going to have 3 children, he believes in this. When he tells you, I'm going to be the most important person in the world, he believes in this. They're delusional. They're mentally ill. So there's no gaslighting here. Narcissists never gaslight. They never gaslight, and they never future fake. And the truth is that narcissists rarely lie because they believe all this nonsense. Psychopaths don't. So psychopaths are manipulative and dangerous. Psychopaths would try to falsify your perception of reality, to make you doubt yourself, to begin to believe that maybe you're crazy or something's wrong with you. That's a psychopathic Machiavellian technique to take control over you and manipulate you.
Yes. Narcissists seem so gullible sometimes, ingenuous, because if you understand this fantasy, this delusional, you offer what he or she wants, and you can manipulate.
So,
but a person with conscious character don't want to do this. But a psychopath or someone with this trait can do is very easy. Sam Veckening, narcissists are moral disengage.
I'm sorry?
Narcissists are moral disengaged.
I'm
It's
sorry,
connection with moral,
morality? Morality.
moral disengage.
Mhm. You mean
Narcissists are,
even morality, ethics, behaving morally?
yes.
Yes. There is a type, there is a variant of narcissists known as prosocial or communal narcissist. That is a kind of narcissist who is very grandiose about his morality. So he would say, I'm a very honest person, I'm very just, I'm very moral, I'm very ethical, I'm very trustworthy, I'm very reliable, I'm amazing, you know. So he would use his morality and his um, contributions, his altruism, his charity, he would use all this, he would leverage these things to obtain narcissistic supply. He would do it openly, he would do it publicly, he would do it ostentatiously, and he would solicit compliments and narcissistic supply. But this is a tiny fraction of narcissists. The majority of narcissists are not immoral. They are amoral. In other words, they are not like psychopaths. Psychopaths are immoral. Psychopaths defy morality. Psychopaths rebel against social rules, against the law, against social norms and mores. Psychopathy is antagonistic. It's opposition to authority, for example. Psychopaths hate authority. They undermine authority and attack authority. Could be the police, could be the government, could be father, could be teacher. They always conflict with authority. They're defiant, they are reckless. This is a psychopath. So psychopath is immoral. In other words, psychopath has a philosophy that morality is wrong, that you should be opposed to morality. They should act in a way that takes away people's rights, that hurts other people, and that this is fully justified because, for example, it's Darwinian, it's evolution, you know, or because people deserve it because they're stupid. So I could say that psychopathy is an ideology. It's an ideology of immorality. That's why I don't believe that psychopathy is a mental illness. I don't think it's a mental illness. I think it's a nihilistic philosophy. Nihilistic, sometimes anarchistic, and definitely always anti-human philosophy. But it's a philosophy, it's an ideology. Psychopaths very often verbalize. When you interview serial killers, they have a whole philosophy why they're doing it. They would go into this. And when you look at the Unabomber, he had a manifesto, and he published the manifesto in the New York Times. The recent guy who killed the chief executive officer of United Health, an insurance company in the United States, there was a guy who killed the... So he had a manifesto too. Psychopaths come with a book. They always have a book. They always have a manifest. They always have a ideology, philosophy. Narcissists are not like that at all. Narcissists are not immoral, and they are not moral. They are amoral. They are not opposed to the law. They couldn't care less. They are not opposed to morality, empathy, ethics. They just couldn't care less. I would say that narcissism is a disorder of indifference, a disorder of apathia. The narcissist couldn't care less. The psychopath cares a lot. Psychopath wants to hurt you. Psychopath is sadistic. He wants to damage you. He wants to break you. He wants to destroy society. He wants to undermine institutions. The psychopath is very externalizes aggression, but in a highly structured way. And he's into this. It's like a lifestyle. It's like, so psychopathy is a highly complex psychosocial cultural phenomenon. It's very complex. There's many dimensions and so on. Whereas the narcissist is a basic primitive animal. It's a binary animal. I feel good, I feel bad. That's it. I have supply, I feel good. I don't have supply, I feel bad. End of story. And narcissists don't care. They don't care about their intimate partners. They don't care about other people. They don't care about themselves. They're highly self-destructive and self-defeating. They don't care about their jobs. They don't care about anything. A psychopath will change jobs very frequently. Psychopaths are itinerant. They're unstable. They change jobs, they change. But a psychopath would change jobs within a narrative. He would say, I'm changing jobs because that way I can make more money, or that way I can be appreciated and promoted. So he will have a narrative, an organizing principle, why he's changing jobs so often. A narcissist is just, he goes with the flow. He's totally inert, totally passive. Psychopaths are active, proactive. Psychopaths initiate, psychopaths take over, they manipulate, they control, they gaslight, they're very active. A narcissist is passive. Whatever happens, who cares? Narcissism is about who cares. Psychopathy is about only I care. So it's a huge gap. These are not the same disorders. So you have charlatans online that say that all psychopaths are narcissists and other such nonsense. You have other charlatans who say that 16% of the population are narcissists. I mean, horrible. The nonsense online is horrible. And we should be very careful about this because the clinical literature is already 150 years old and it's pretty clear about many issues.
Yes, Professor, with all this context, the confusion is installed. And the people are so confused because the behavior of the persons that looks like adults but is acting like a child. In a recent video, you said that a statistic lecture in a seminar, you said that in three adults, two behave like children and one have the abilities from a chronologic and maturity. So you, what I can expect, what we can expect from this role that three persons, you have two childs in adult bodies, what we have to expect, because we can think that this person is narcissist, but are not, just like a child.
Yeah.
That don't want to compromise, that don't want to responsibilities, that don't want to nothing.
Yeah.
Don't want to marry, don't want to take care of this dog or the child, don't have compromise, want everything in hand, everything. You have to agree with all the bullshit. Oh, I am a broccoli. Oh, I am a dog.
Why broccoli? I like broccoli.
And it's very difficult for the person that is grounded in reality, because for an adult, you have to keep your mouth closed.
Yeah, it was not a seminar. It was I'm a visiting professor in Southeast European University, so it was a class in the university. Yeah, the recent studies show that 60 to 70% of people would not qualify as adults. They still retain what we call neoteny. They still retain critical childlike psychodynamics and clinical features that by no means we can classify them as adults. This is nothing new. In the 70s, there was a book, The Peter Pan Syndrome. In the 60s, there was the concept of puer aeternus, or puella aeterna, the eternal adolescent. And so the thing is, like Freud said, you have to choose between the pleasure principle and the reality principle. Adults choose the reality principle. Children choose the pleasure principle. And the thing is that reality nowadays is so horrible on so many levels that it is a rational decision to not grow up. That's the problem. The problem is that it's rational. I would even say that it's a positive adaptation to not grow up.
Mhm.
Because if you don't grow up, you become a parasite. And as a parasite, you can live off. You can live off your parents, you can live off your friends, you can live off your intimate partner, you can. So not growing up is a survival strategy. And a survival strategy that renounces reality and allows you to continue to exist in a paracosm, in a fantasy, in an alternative reality. And if you find reality intolerable and unbearable and threatening and unacceptable and unpleasant and dissonant, then you have no incentive to grow up. There are no sufficient rewards, no sufficient positive reinforcements to growing up. On the contrary, when you grow up, you have to pay taxes, you have responsibilities, you may be sent to die as a soldier. Horrible things can happen to you. Your children, some bad things can happen to your children, or your children may hate you, just statistically quite common. It's an ugly scenario, ugly script. The future is ugly. So many people choose to never grow up and to remain childlike. And so, how to accommodate this? Well, the first solution is technology. Modern technologies are fantasy-based. So they allow you to survive within fantasy and never exit the fantasy. Modern technologies encourage you to not have relationships. They encourage you to not work too hard. They encourage you to play a lot, video games or whatever. They encourage you to pretend, for example, to pretend that your friends on Facebook are your friends. They encourage you, they legitimize your negative effects, your rage, your envy. They're not legitimate. So modern technologies create an immersive, all-encompassing environment, which is essentially fantasy-based, and allow you to not grow up to the day you die without any functional problem. And so we are creating a world of children. And soon I think all of us will become or remain children. For example, you mentioned milestones in growing up. You mentioned marriage. Why get married? You mentioned children. Why have children? You mentioned having a stable job. Why have a stable job? Why do these things? They don't pay. They're horrible. They are not.
Very difficult.
They don't
Oh,
contribute.
I am tired. Oh, so
Yeah.
here in Brazil, many have jobs, but have people too. But the people don't want to work because I have to wake up too soon, take a bus, and the boss said what I have to say, or what I have to do. No, I have internet. I will be rich. I will play games and take money. So it's very easy. I work in a school, and the teachers can say to the children, please bring me your work, because if you said to the children, please bring your work, I want to see. What? You are asking for my work? I am so ashamed. Call the mom, and the mom and the teacher. You are bad. You are bullying my child.
Yeah.
The teacher has to shut up and do what they want, because they can be frustrated. They can be receive a piece of reality.
Yeah.
It's very insane, because this kind of people can't be a narcissist, but behave like a narcissist and don't have empathy. And lack of empathy can be considered a hallmark of NPD. Just
No. Lack of empathy is, first of all, it's not accurate to say that psychopaths and narcissists don't have empathy. They have a special kind of empathy. They have what I call cold empathy, which is a combination of cognitive and reflexive empathy. They don't have affective empathy. They don't have emotional empathy. In other words, they don't resonate with you emotionally. When they see you crying, they will not be sad. They will not feel sad. So there's no emotional response. But they see you crying, they will know that you are sad. So this is cognitive empathy. And maybe even they will do this with the face. That is reflexive empathy. So they have the primitive empathy, reflexive, they have cognitive, but they did not evolve. They did not develop emotional empathy because they don't have emotions or access to emotions. The psychopath doesn't have access to, and psychopath and narcissist don't have access to positive emotions, and the borderline is overwhelmed by her emotions. She has a very bad relationship with her emotions. Her emotions are enemies. And so she needs to regulate her emotions from the outside or commit suicide. So it's a very life-threatening thing, her emotions. So all these people, they don't do emotions well. And today we're beginning to realize that borderlines as well don't have much reduced affective empathy, emotional empathy. We used to think that borderlines do possess emotional empathy. But today, recent studies and so on show that they are compromised when it comes to emotional empathy. If you have bad relationships with your emotions, you cannot have emotional empathy because it's dangerous for you. If the borderline empathizes with you when you're crying, she will feel sad, and then the sadness will take over and she will become suicidal. So she cannot empathize with you when you're crying. If the narcissist empathizes with you when you're crying, then he will get in touch with emotions like shame that are very dangerous for the narcissist. So the narcissist says, I don't want to have emotions at all. If the psychopath empathizes with you, he will not be able to take your money or have sex with you. So it will defeat the goals of the psychopath. So in all these cases, there's no emotional empathy, but there are other forms of empathy.
It's the form to survive. Professor Sam, I have a question. Borderline narcissist and antisocial belongs to the same group and have many common behavior. But what is the difference? Because it's so similar. Looking superficial, I can see, oh, you are borderline, but and the most people think that the person is just borderline or just narcissist or just nothing more. But we can see that the person has many traits. Sometimes the group A, B, C, not just B. Can you explain the difference between narcissists, borderlines, and antisocial, even if they have similar behaviors. And like empathy, emotion empathy is one similar to this group.
Yeah. So the short answer is that if you have a cluster B disorder of any kind, then you're likely to show clinical features of all cluster B disorders. You may also be diagnosed with a cluster A or cluster C personality disorder, but that would be a comorbidity. That would be. But if you are a psychopath, or let's say if you're a narcissist, you will always have phases in life where you are a borderline. For example, in narcissistic collapse, when the narcissist cannot obtain narcissistic supply, there is deficient narcissistic supply, not enough. The narcissist becomes emotionally dysregulated. In narcissistic mortification, when the narcissist is humiliated, suddenly humiliated, unexpectedly, and there's narcissistic mortification, the narcissist loses all his defenses, he decompensates, and he becomes indistinguishable from a borderline patient. After narcissistic mortification, the narcissist has emotional dysregulation and becomes suicidal, a suicidal ideation, exactly like borderline. Similarly, a narcissist who is challenged or sustains narcissistic injury or threatened becomes a primary psychopath. A psychopath who is frustrated repeatedly in trying to obtain a goal becomes grandiose and resembles a narcissist. So the modern approach is that all cluster B personality disorders are just facets, aspects of a single clinical entity. And that is the approach in the ICD. A single
Yes.
clinical entity with emphasis on trait domains. Various trait domains are emphasized, and there is no type constancy. Any therapist would tell you, any clinician would tell you that when they work with a borderline, she's sometimes a narcissist and she's sometimes a psychopath. Any clinician would confirm this. So all these distinctions are artificial and wrong. Artificial and wrong. However, when you are a psychopath, when you're in a psychopathic phase, or when you're in a narcissistic phase, or when you're in a borderline phase, and you can be in various phases at various times, there are differences. There are differences between the trait domains. So I mentioned a few. Yes? But for example, a psychopath couldn't care less about narcissistic supply. He's not interested in narcissistic supply. He's goal-oriented, but not the attention from other people, feedback from other people is meaningless to the psychopath. And the narcissist cannot survive without narcissistic supply. It's a crucial fuel for self-regulation. The borderline cannot control her emotions. Her emotions overwhelm her, drown her, threaten her, and so on. She is dysregulated. That's the main feature of borderline. And yet, when she decompensates, for example, when the borderline is faced with abandonment and rejection, real abandonment and rejection or anticipated, she then becomes a psychopath. She does not emotionally dysregulate. She decompensates. Her defenses disappear. She becomes defiant, reckless, crazy-making. She acts out. But there is no emotional dysregulation in that phase. She becomes a secondary psychopath, impulsive. So, yes, there are major differences between the trait domains, combinations of traits, but any individual with a cluster B disorder always is one of these at different times, always. And I agree with you that we should expand this attitude and we should say that there is only one personality disorder. Because, for example, the narcissist when the narcissist fails repeatedly to obtain narcissistic supply, which is a condition known as narcissistic collapse. The narcissist becomes schizoid. He avoids all social contact. He withdraws, he isolates himself. He refuses to go out, he refuses to meet people, he refuses to talk to anyone, he cuts himself off. That is schizoid behavior. And schizoid behavior is essentially cluster C. So I agree that it's a single personality disorder, and all of these differential diagnoses are counterfactual. They are wrong, in my view. All these distinctions are wrong. That's why we have so many comorbidities. Comorbidity
Yes.
means the same individual is diagnosed with 6 personality disorders and a mood disorder, an anxiety disorder, and I don't know what. It's nonsense. It's ridiculous. Something wrong with this kind of system.
Yes. Here in Brazil has a psychiatrist that was almost canceled because he said exactly what he said about borderlines that can alter for a state, can lose this totally dysregulated and kill someone. Here in Brazil has a killer, a woman, Elise Matsunaga. She was diagnosed with borderline, and he find a traição, esqueci a palavra. Her husband was getting out with another woman, and he finds and film and put a detective to take pictures. When he came from home, he killed him in cuts in pieces and put in a bag. And take the bag, 2 bags, take the car and go to a forest and throw away. And call the mom of his husband. Oh, my dear, I'm late. I'm waiting for him.
Yeah. The
she gets in this psychopathic state.
Yes.
And this psychiatry said that borderline can do bad things. And the community here in Brazil, the borderline, oh no, borderline is so empathetic and so warm and can kill except here in Brazil, it's difficult to talk about borderline because it's in a bubble.
No, first of all, many borderlines.
Candle bubble.
First of all, many borderlines are comorbid. In other words, many borderlines are also narcissists, and quite a big fraction of borderlines are also psychopaths. So comorbidity of psychopathy and borderline is pretty high. And definitely comorbidity of narcissism and borderline is very high. That's one thing. Second thing, today we definitely, the mainstream, what we teach in university and so on, is that borderlines switch to a secondary psychopathic state when they decompensate, when their defenses are down, and when they act out. So then they become defiant and reckless, but also very violent and very aggressive. Anyone who has been with a borderline would tell you that a borderline, when she's frustrated, or when she's jealous, or when she anticipates rejection and abandonment, or when she is rejected and abandoned, or when she's humiliated, in all these conditions, a borderline becomes very violent. Anyone would tell you this.
Yes.
The borderline throws objects, destroys electronic devices, can try to hurt you, beats you up, runs at you with a knife, anyone who has ever been with a borderline is acquainted with these scenes. They're very common. So externalized aggression in borderline personality disorder has been documented and is a clear clinical feature. Killing is a psychopathic act. So for killing, I would think that this woman is a comorbid. I think she is also a psychopath. Killing is rare because
Yes.
killing requires primary psychopathy. And so this woman is probably also a psychopath. And the fact that she called the mother, the husband's mother, and she pretended and she acted, psychopaths do that. They fake, they pretend, they act, they lie, they deceive. They're deceitful. Psychopaths are deceitful. But borderline can be violent in other ways, not necessarily kill. Violence is a clinical feature of borderline, definitely. Whoever says otherwise doesn't know the field.
But it's need to, the borderline need to know this, because he or she can say, be this kind of person too, not just the high empathetic people. So I can't, it's prohibited to say that the borderline can be violent, and it's something real.
It's bizarre because every
How
borderline,
can you treat this person? He or she has a potential.
yeah. Well,
It's not that
the
he
violence
or
could be
she will do.
you know, the violence could be self-directed. In other words, in the majority of
Yes.
cases, the violence is externalized. In the majority of cases, so they, as I said, they would break all kinds of things and they would go crazy, scream, attack, physically attack, and so on. But in a minority of borderline cases, there is internalized aggression. So these borderlines would become suicidal and they may even attempt suicide. That's also a form of aggression. It's also violence.
Yes.
It is self-directed violence, but it's still violence. So there is no borderline case without aggression, externalized or internalized. Period. No such thing. Not one.
Verwerking, and this internalized self-hatred and violence can be create immune disease, because I see.
I don't know. I'm not an expert on this.
Okay.
I'm not an expert.
Because
I know that the Gabor Mate, who is a medical doctor, says that, yeah, there is a connection between trauma and autoimmune diseases,
autoimmune is
including complex
very
trauma.
it's very common, very common. Oh, I think that you are tired. Yeah.
No, don't worry. But
Oh,
we shouldn't make it too long because people on YouTube, they don't like very long.
okay, yes, okay,
After that,
yes.
they sign off.
Professor, I wanna thank you a lot
Thank
for
you.
your patience, for everything, and I will continue share your work and do
Thank
the
you.
translations and dublation. You help a lot. Brazilian folks like a lot love your work. Thank you so
I thank
much.
you. I thank you for your support and for everything you're doing to spread my work and so on. It's very nice of you, very kind of you. And I will be uploading this. I now have to upload the seminar from Zagreb. I gave a seminar in Zagreb, so I have to upload now 5 installments. So I will upload this interview next week,
Ok.
and I will let you know when I've uploaded.
Oh,
Okay?
gracias. Muito obrigada.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day
Bye
there.
bye.
Narcissist free. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.